It's war, but not as we know it. Naval collision between China and the Philippines in the South China Sea, with the use of water cannon. Launching potatoes at each other in Britain and Iceland's Cod War of the 1970s. It sounds almost comical. But are these tactics actually useful? War without killing, yet. Join me, Jan Darasz, for How We Got Here.
Intelligence reports, recently declassified by Romanian President Klaus Iohannis, suggest that Russia ran an interference campaign designed to benefit right-wing presidential candidate Călin Georgescu on TikTok and Telegram during Romania's presidential elections in late November. But hybrid warfare is nothing new, and it is not exclusive to Russia. It has taken different shapes and forms. For instance, Cod. The Cod Wars, a series of confrontations between the UK and Iceland in the second half of the 20th century, are an excellent example of hybrid warfare. This is because they involved a blend of conventional military tactics, economic pressure, diplomatic maneuvering, and psychological strategies, all employed in a multi-dimensional conflict. Meanwhile, China's hybrid warfare has something to do with brandishing sticks, but not necessarily chopsticks. In September 2021, videos surfaced showing Indian and Chinese troops beating the living daylights out of each other with sticks and spiked clubs at the de facto border between the two countries in the Himalayas. There are also economic stakes at play. China has banned the export of technology to make rare earth magnets, on top of another ban on exporting technology to extract and separate the critical materials. Also, China has imposed tariffs on Australian goods during political disagreements. In terms of putting diplomatic stakes to work, China slammed Lithuania for allowing Taiwan to open a representative office in Vilnius. Beijing downgraded its diplomatic ties with Vilnius to the level of charge d'affaires and began coercing the EU to prevent other member states from following in Lithuania's footsteps. And while we are on the topic of Taiwan, China's air and sea drills around the island have intensified since US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taipei in 2022. Just on Monday, some 90 Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels participated in military exercises around the island, simulating attacks on foreign ships and blockading sea routes. China has also been literally stealing the Philippines' soil to build artificial specks of land of its own among the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea. But it's not just land that can be weaponized. The flow of people, i.e. migration, also can be used as a tool. Ankara capitalized on the ISIS-triggered refugee crisis to extort financial support to accommodate the asylum seekers in Turkey, but also to relocate them to EU member states on a one-to-one basis. Negotiated on the initiative of former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, Brussels agreed to provide Ankara with financial help worth some 6 billion euros to stem the flow of Syrian refugees.
Our guest today is Joanna Siekiera, Assistant Professor at the War Studies University, based here in Warsaw. Welcome once more. Great to have you.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be here.
We've seen these collisions in the South China Sea, water cannon being used, so they're not firing guns, they're firing kind of water pistols, I suppose. There was a big brawl on the Himalayan Indian-Chinese border. Instead of using artillery shells, they just fought with their bare hands and picked up any sticks. It was kind of massive, a big bar brawl almost. I can remember when I was a kid watching these catapults being launched from British ships during the Iceland-Britain Cod War. And is there any sense to having these non-lethal demonstrations?
Definitely there is, and I would say that countries would go even further in using non-kinetic warfare or methods because it's cheaper, it's faster, they are not getting this accusation of being harmful, of being aggressive, of starting the war or using not proportionate measures, because that's also very important, not only to win the war, but most importantly to keep the face, to keep the facade as a peaceful democratic country. And now, because we are so interconnected economically, countries simply cannot afford losing that face. So I would say that we will witness most ridiculous usage of warfare So not only exactly kinetic, direct, heavy armor, but other measures as those you recalled, but also economic, legal, and so on.
Yes, I mean, it's kind of a universal concept of what war is. It's not just, as you say, the tanks and the guns.
No.
Your speciality is lawfare. Can you just define that for us and give us some examples of how this is used and manipulated by potential belligerent parties?
Lawfare comes from two words, law and warfare, so legal warfare. That countries, they are struggling militarily but also politically, using law or misusing existing legal norms, but also legal institutions like United Nations and all the treaties we are in, tribunals, courts all around the world. The first thing you mentioned is South China Sea and Philippines versus China. 2016, we had famous ruling by the Permanent Arbitration Court, ruling that South China Sea, those parts, they are not part of territorial waters of the Chinese Republic, but indeed they belong to the Philippines. Though Chinese, they never accepted that judgment. And now what we are witnessing with those water cannons, exactly this is the case, that they will not accept the law because the law was not giving them the legal rights. Russia did the same against last year's International Criminal Court judgment against Vladimir Putin, and we've been talking about that exactly
yes,
here.
Yes, that's our last discussion.
This is it, and we can see the repetition of international behavior, maneuvering, how countries and their heads of states, they will manipulate law, they will interpret law for their own benefit, but I regret to say that those non-democratic totalitarian regimes are better in that than us democracies, because we are looking at those misinterpretation of law or breaching of law, but we cannot use the law against them. And this is my personal, my professional mission to tell my students when I teach in Poland and abroad in NATO institutions, start using law as a weapon, start using law as a tool to protect us. Because again, those guys, they are not stupid, they know law, that's why they know how to maneuver.
The formulation of this universal law, the ICC, the United Nations, was that done by liberal democracies with the philosophy of everybody obeying, everybody playing the game?
So good faith, that we enter into international relations hoping that the other party will obey the same norms they just signed under. And
that doesn't apply to a non-liberal authoritarian regime. That they can sign anything and it doesn't matter what they sign.
It should matter, definitely, but the weakness of public international law is this lack of sanctions as an element of the norm, is lack of obligatory judiciary or executive power. We don't have any global government or global police. Courts are based on voluntary basis, so either countries, they sign the statute of, for example, ICC, or they would be like, yes, we are war criminals and we give our hands to the court prosecutor, like in Nuremberg case. But as we discussed last time, I don't see it coming in 21st century. Countries are thinking about their benefits, about their political allies, so why would they go on a voluntary basis?
Is that a mistake that the West, excuse me, the lawmakers made, not to include everybody in the process?
Well,
it's kind of the poacher turning gamekeeper in a way.
I wouldn't say that was a mistake, because I believe that on every stage we do everything in the best possible way we can. So if we cannot turn back time, and we cannot, how not acting now, how to think like perpetrators do, that they will watch, witness, and search through the legal codes, because they also have lawyers. Oh yes, they have money, so they have good lawyers, and we keep forgetting that. We think that Talibans are stupid because what they are doing in Afghanistan. No, they are not stupid. They know how to make money out of opium, for example. So they can be there for a long time. This is not how other Western commentators, they said, oh, the soon Taliban regime will be gone. It will not be gone. Even just a minute ago, when your colleagues were taking care of me, we were watching television, and somebody said that now what's happening in Georgia, it means that Russia is getting weak. No, Russia is still strong. They stand strong. This is Georgia getting stronger, just a small level up, because we, the West, Europe, we were not prepared for the war. We are still getting caught by surprise. We are still asking, how is that possible? What they are doing, for example, towards children in Ukraine. Yes, they will do that. They will do that. They will misuse and they will hit the spots that they are the most critical for us, like democracy, protection of human rights, protection of children.
You say that we need to use the law as a weapon.
Indeed, yes.
Now, how do you reconcile that with respect for the law, where it seems it's an objective body of legislation? It seems that we have to manipulate our own laws. It
is, and I get from time to time this accusation of how dare I to weaponize the law. No, it is only me commenting how our enemies are weaponizing the law. So I'm not saying that we must break the law, that we must breach the law. What I'm saying is just to use proportionate the tools, the means, because we are not doing, we are allowing other regimes, other terrorist groups to laugh at our democratic rules, principles, while we are not doing anything. ICC arrest warrant against Vladimir Putin last year, this year, Netanyahu, as we spoke, no legal basis. So why are we not using law as a shield, but also as a weapon, as a sword, to protect us?
You also mentioned that we don't have any overarching power, excuse me again, to enforce our
we could if we wanted. We could, but we don't.
How would that work?
So we need a political will on a joint basis. I would not expect to have this unanimity at the global level, at United Nations level, but at least regionally. We have NATO and NATO Plus, so all the allies in, for example, in the Pacific, who are pro-NATO, who are pro-democratic values. So I believe that we should unite with our allies and partner countries, because they are also afraid what will happen. Russia is doing what they are doing in Russia, but China is watching. So what will happen next? Would we have war in Indo-Pacific? Would that be against Philippines, Taiwan, or maybe a few fronts, and then we are divided?
Can you foresee a collapse of this legal order?
I pray for that. I do. I don't want this legal order, international UN, as we have now, because this is weak. Too many people are suffering in wars, but also migrant camps or refugee camps, South Sudan. Great idea of United Nations, and then United Nations said, no, we don't have more funds. But there is another generation of children, babies, who never seen freedom or independence. They were born, living, and maybe died in refugee camps under the flag of UN. We have Big Five, again, Russia and China in it, voting everything. So we must change the existing international law, or maybe interpretation of it, because the war is there. Either is it lethal, kinetic, or none. And we are not prepared for none of these.
It seems the common factor in all our discussions is the lack of will.
Indeed.
If you can have all the legal structure, but if you don't want to or you can't enforce it,
unfortunately.
Joanna Shikera, thank you very much for joining us once more.
My pleasure.
So, thank you very much for joining us. Do join us again next time for How We Got Here.